Hi folks, hope you're doing well. You can see the time on your right and the date, so I'll leave it at that. This is a little video talking about Manchester United again. After they lost 6-1 to Tottenham today at home. I think it's a good job they won their fans here. Certainly for the owners and their chairman, because that would be a bad day for them if there were fans at the ground today. First point about the game, if Martial should be sent off, then the Tottenham player who pushed him to start the issue should have been sent off as well. I mean, how on earth the referee didn't spot that or didn't realise that one player pushed another, the other player pushed him back, so therefore you either send no one off or you send them both off. Yeah, it's ridiculously stupid. I understand it. I mean, they're saying you shouldn't retaliate, but don't take human out of the equation. You've got to understand, in the heat of the moment, certainly in a football game, you would if the referees had ever been football players, they would understand it. They would let that go. They would have had a word with both players. The referee would have just said, cut it out, lads. No need for that. You might not have fans here, but it's still been recorded and shown live everywhere, so stop that, please. If you don't, I'll have to send you off. Simple. That would have done it. But you didn't understand football, and that's common for referees. Referees just don't understand the game that they're involved in because they've never played it. Which, again, is why you've got to say they need to change that. They need to have referees who actually understand the game, who have played the game, whether it's coached or have been involved in football at a reasonable level, who show they actually have an understanding of football. So, Anyway, more important to this point is that obviously people will be going to be trying to work out, but what can United do? Can they bring in Sancho? Can they bring in this? Can they bring in that? Can they bring in the other to make it work? What about a new manager? Would that make it work? But as I said in probably a number of videos already, look at Man United. Man United have a pattern that seems to work for them. Busby babes. Then nothing. Why? Because there was no youth coming through in mass. The development on youth, the scouting for young players just disappeared. Disappeared before Busby finished his career. And the reason it disappeared is because we did it. We've got the players in, we can relax now. Same with Fergie. Fergie came in, what did they do? Fergie brought in new scouts, sent them out, told them what he wanted. Suddenly they found Giggs, Beckham, Scholes, the Nevilles. But plus there's more, right? All that wonderful youth players who, certainly most of which, that youth at first 11 came into the first team and stayed in football. You've got Beckham as well. That's the difference. You can see the same pattern with Busby. Busby had that youth, the Busby babes. And yes, a number of them died in the plane crash, but not all of them. Some of them survived, and he was able to bring in other youth into the system to replace those who had been lost. And so they were still called the Busby babes. He brought best in, as a youngster. And it worked. They got the right players in, the right young players, and it worked. How many times did they try to do it after that? But certainly in my experience of United, they didn't really. Not till Fergie. Not till Fergie. All the years before, we had some decent players. Under Lou McCarthy's management, we had a team that looked pretty exciting. It wasn't really a group of youngsters that had come through. Not that I recall. But then again, I was only incredibly young at the time. Really was. I mean, at the time I didn't start supporting United until after that. After Lou McCarthy's time. I may have done just in Lou McCarthy's time, but I don't really remember him as a manager. Not in my time of supporting him, but you can certainly see with Greenwood, you can certainly see after Busby. No, sorry, Greenwood. Who do I mean? Who was that manager? Atkinson. Ron Atkinson, there you go. Yeah. And you can see with the managers just after Busby. The focus was on, let's try and bring in the right player. Yeah, mature player. Yeah, to try and rescue this club. And it just didn't work. And it's not going to work now, quite likely. The only way it's going to work is if they do it the same way, and then they have a group of young players that they bring in, and they come through the system, and then they can add to them the good players like Vidic and Evra and Pallister, Bruce and Keane and Cantona and York and Cole, Sheringham, Rooney. Through the years, they just kept on adding, to those core players and bringing in some quality players to play with them, to make the team better all the time. Ronaldo. There were some fantastic players brought for United. So in Fergie's time, Fergie did basically the same as Busby. To gain that success. But Fergie lasted a lot longer. He had a much, much longer time of success, so he had to rebuild a team. But he still had the same core of players that come through that youth system. Players that knew the club. Any player coming in would be told about the club by these 5 or 6 players. I say 5 or 6 because obviously after Beckham left, that would be one less. Certainly, you had the 2 Nevilles. You had Giggs, Scholes, Butt, Beckham. I think that's it of the group who really made it and came through into the first team and were prolific members in the first team. I say it's 7 players. 7 players from a youth system. About the same age. To come through and lift the club up and carry that club for all those years. Busby had it with Charlton. Charlton and Law and a few others were the ones for him who were the key players that carried the club. Who we've got now? We've had no one come through the youth system really since those players that Fergie brought through, because the policy went from youth to whatever it went to. Certainly wasn't on youth. I mean, you have to say what United need to do is get the best youth coaches in the world. You want to get back again? Get the best youth coaches in the world. Get the best scouts that are good at spotting young talent. Young talent with the right attitude that can be brought to the club. Don't go too far afield. Just really search the UK for this talent. And bring them in, all around about the same sort of age. And you'll have success again. as a club. But buying Sancho won't make a difference. Because in the same window, you just bought Cavani. Cavani is a waste of money. Really a complete waste of money. Certainly, how are you going to play him? How does the team play? You look at other teams, Cavani might work. Depends on how they play. But the way United play, how's that going to work? Telles would be a good sign. I think he's far better going forward than Shaw. And at the moment, well, certainly that may be the point. Telles comes in, he's a great crosser of the ball, so you bring Cavani in to be the one in the box for when those crosses come in. That might work. Might. Of course, when they first announced Cavani, we didn't know anything about Telles coming in. Not for certainty. But apparently now the bid's been accepted and, it's just a case of a medical. So, but that may work. It may simply be a case that Cavani was brought in because you're bringing in a good crosser of the ball. And apart from Magallo, who do we have that's really good in the air up front? Greenwood? No. Rashford? No. Martial? No. Now, 3 players that are very good with ball to feet. They're not prolific in the air. They're not known for that. Now, of course, if they can create the space and run into space and the ball can be crossed perfectly into that space, they can head the ball into the goal. But they're not, proper sort of centre forwards. Whose job is it to get in there and, get on the crosses, which Cavani is more like that. So, maybe Telles is the player that they brought in for that purpose. Well, certainly, as I say, Shaw, no, I give up on Shaw. I mean, the problem for United is, again, they've gone into contract negotiations and massively overpaid players to stay. Massively overpaid players and players that aren't good enough, which is really, really bad. Really, really bad. I mean, I suppose they see it as, well, if we sign this player on, we don't need to bring another player in, so that's cool. Yeah. Not cool, not from the point of view that these players aren't good enough. So, I think youth is one way forward. That certainly is a way that the club has moved forward in the past. From being in a position where they're not moving forward. So, say you see it clear. Busby babes, Fergie babes, and they were the times when United went from being also rans to being champions. When they had that youth coming through. So the focus has to be on that. Now, maybe with the right youth players, Ollie would be the right person to bring him through because he was a youth manager at United. So maybe with the right young players coming through, he would be the right person. But is that happening at the club? Apparently, there's some good young players, but to be honest, we're told every couple of years that there's some great young players. Gomez was touted as a phenomenal player. He was given chances. Chong, touted as a phenomenal player, given chances. When they were given chances, they didn't shine. Now, if you can't do it when you're given a chance to, certainly when you're given a few chances to, understandable, the first chance, okay. You might muck up. What you're supposed to do after that is you're supposed to go away. You're supposed to work on your confidence. You're supposed to figure out, okay, these are the mistakes you made. This is why you made the mistake. I'm going to improve upon that. Next time I won't make the same mistake, right? That's cool. So you don't. And even if you make another mistake, it's not the same mistake. So therefore you lift your head up, continue. That's what the club needs to be teaching their players. Because when you saw that youth system come through under Fergie and under Busby, they weren't that bothered. If they made a mistake, they just got on with it. Their heads didn't drop. But for some reason, Gomez and Chong and the other young players came in, they had the chances, and they completely fluffed it. That's the reality of the situation. They just completely fluffed it. So, yeah, a better youth system is what's needed. Really investing on youth, on coaches, on scouts who can find those young players. Whenever I played Football Manager, I've always made sure I've got scouts who can find that young potential. You know, those potential stars, you know, around about 17 years old, 16, 17. Get them who have got good marks in that way. Send them out all over the place. Go and find me these players that are going to be the fantastic players in the future. That's what you need. At Man United, that's what you need. Because we know that if you're Man United, you go for a player, and the club, like Dortmund, if Liverpool gone for Sancho, quite likely Dortmund would have said 80 million. Because it's United, it's 108 million. That's because United are one of the richest clubs in the world, and teams know that, so they add. Well, we know that. We know that's the case. We also know they add because United are more desperate than Liverpool are. If Liverpool are the only team interested in Sancho, then Dortmund know they're not going to be able to squeeze them for every penny. Because Liverpool just walk away and say, we don't really need them. Whereas when it's United, the clubs know, yeah, there's a desperate need for the players here. So we can fleece them for that. So there you go. That's what it is. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if that youth does get developed. I mean, it's going to at some point in time. Whether it takes another 30 years to happen, we don't know. We'll see what happens. You take care. God bless. Bye-bye.